Hello everyone, and welcome to the parallel non-monetary economic revolution of the 100%. This is an introductory video to the 8-module video workshop. So I'm Kendall Eaton, the author of A Chance for Everyone, the Parallel Non-Monetary Economy, published in 2020. I've decided to commit this introduction to video for the benefit of Zoom meetings and because our first event was hampered by a few technical issues. As a first introductory meeting, it was a suck it and see event, but everyone stayed despite my somewhat inept presentation. All participants asked intuitive questions that gave an indication they had a general grasp of what the PNME can be and do. My on-the-fly answers probably didn't do the questions complete justice, but that is what our workshop is for, so we can use the video as prompt to collectively assess each topic and potential solutions. All the people that attended and booked tickets were people who are already doing phenomenal things for their communities on a regular basis. This already gives us an advantage over any monetary arrangement. Part 1 consists of this talk, and while I speak, I'd like you to think about what drew you to this subject, your passions, your skills, your prime concerns, personal activities, and to think of how what you take in here affects the prospects of those activities and for your families. Part 2 will consist of a 5-minute video outline of the entire 8-module workshop, followed by a 25-minute video, What is the Parallel Non-Monetary Economy?, that outlines what form the PNME can take and how we might implement it. So now you're waiting to be impressed. Well, let me manage your expectations there. I hold my hands up to not being the best person for this job. There are far more intuitive, imaginative, better informed and educated people that will take this proposal forward and communicate it in a far more effective way. I'm not the last authority on this subject, so I expect to be challenged, and this provides context, perspective and refinement. So it's constructive, and we all need reality checks. My research for the book commenced in 2008 with endless reading and consultations with eminent economists and authors, some of whom have advised governments, academics, authors, people running parallel economies and social media debates. This intensified after the book was published in 2020. Yet in all such engagements, not one solitary obstacle has been raised that jeopardises the possibilities of the parallel non-monetary economy working. Also, some predictions I made came true. If you'd be kind enough to indulge me, I'd like you to think of me as another Einstein, but only in the sense that when questioned by a particular zealous devotee with various references, Einstein replied, "You can't possibly expect me to recall all the research I've done. I do my research, I publish it, then free my mind for other things." Well, my mind has been freeing itself without consulting me for some time now, so that's another urgency to share this proposal so that it belongs to all of us together. Some want a quick fix. Well, I can confidently say there is no quicker fix available in the entire world. But media has swamped us with so much information. To save time, people scan and want instant gratification. We mentally swipe and scroll. Some say, sum it up in a couple of sentences. So let me see, you want the whole preferential economic history and complexity of capitalism summed up in a couple of sentences? It just isn't going to cut it, is it? Some want a story that relates to their reality. I do have a story about a 14-year-old girl in Kutupalong refugee camp in Bangladesh, but maybe we can devise a better story together that relates to our reality. There is no quick explanation. We really have to sit down, put in the hours and hammer it out together. But 8 modules should enable us not just to work it out, but by module 6 we should be forming a database connections and the process of concretizing the pathway to fulfillment. So I will be testing your patience. You might feel like children in the back of the car saying, "Are we nearly there yet?" Or "Come on, get to the point, tell us what it is." But there are 2 things wrong with that. One is that it's wrong for one person to decide for others the terms of their lives. And 2, if it's given to you, it's not yours. If it comes from inside you, you're not going to deny that. So in that way, it will belong to all of us, and seeing is believing. I'm hoping by the end of this introduction session, you'll be able to see, even in a rough or blurred form, and it will start to change everything that you see around us and what we observe on the news. It should start to alter the realistic possibilities of what our lives can be made up of. So to our first illustration. Would you say this iceberg floating in the ocean and the tiny ship of neoliberal capitalism is a fair representation of the world economic situation? In the boat we have the neoliberal elite, actually the entire monetary system, or those we refer to as the 1%. Neoliberalism in layman's terms means basically the process of minimizing financial responsibility while retaining maximum profit or revenue. It took off with Thatcher selling nationalised industries, keeping financial administration in the UK, minimising costs through profit maximising, importing products and services, blaming other countries for our pollution. It's a kind of post-colonialism without the outlay and headache. So now I'd like to ask you 4 questions. The first is, what makes the world go round? Most would shout out money. Money talks is the expression. But do we see money changing hands much? Vast quantities of gold bullion being shipped between international bankers? No, of course. We know it's mainly digital accounting. Lots of figures leaping the ionosphere. But this is to our advantage, as we'll see later. Now, when it comes to exchanging anything, whether it's material or energy or a service, economists will always relate everything back to the money element. That's their job. Commodities, collateral, assets, etc. Yet, is this a reliable way to account for all human activity? It's said that the UK, the 5th richest country in the world, could not function without the shadow economy. That's all unaccounted for. Charitable work, voluntary work, people dealing in cash that avoids the accountant, favours, etc. And we could apply plenty of unofficial processes from officials on top of that. It's estimated to constitute an equivalent of 30% of the UK GDP. So money itself is not a reliable measurement or even realistic. So this iceberg that we're looking at constitutes a parallel reality that the majority of the population are already living in, either marginally or completely outside of any serious level of the monetary economy. And we'll see just what proportion that marginal level is in our video later. The second question, what determines price? Now, it has to be said, many economists are stuck in the past here, unaware of how the global economy has moved on, along with, sad to say, many dyed-in-the-wool militant socialists and trade unionists. We were used to thinking of profit being a markup above that of overheads, manufacturing, logistics, distribution, purchasing, labour, expertise, etc. So while these still enter the books, financialisation, monopoly control and mercantilism effectively removed cost as any significant influence on profit. For example, Nick Dearden of Global Justice Now published a book entitled Farmer Nomics. In it, he examined why certain communities were denied vaccines during the COVID-19 pandemic. And what he discovered was that whilst one manufacturer charged the UK NHS between $200 and $300 per shot, they charged the United States $1,000 per shot for the same vaccine. When we look at energy prices in the UK, with what is paid on the European continent, we can see a great disparity. Southern Water are set to increase their prices by 91% without hardly delivering anything extra. Price is made up around boardroom tables by sales and chief executives who pluck prices out of thin air because in most cases there are no competitors. The new pricing model is charge whatever you want, tell people they're now in debt so you can squeeze the maximum that you're capable of achieving. Price is a made up fiction, but this too is to our advantage. Our third question. Think about your daily informal work, everything that you do that constitutes work, maintaining things, caring, parenting, cooking, cleaning. The question is, who decided that this should be a cost to us? Well, throughout history, we know it's been a moral or even religious obligation and still is in many places. But when war and conflicts tear families apart and suddenly someone else has to step in, it often becomes a monetized situation. We know this is a capitalist way of commodifying everything we need from day to day. So caring became an industry, or self-sacrificing carers suffer for the lack of support. Protecting ourselves from harm became a profession. Mental health, producing food in quantity. The list is endless. We became preconditioned to accept the owner-imposed distinction between what we regard as formal and informal or abstract labour. We're told by certain pragmatists and philosophers that this is all part of the human condition, that competing, causing wars, mass rapes, murder, torture and mental health issues, we've just got to suck it all up. That's life. So why do we call them inhumanities? It's because we all make choices with the responsibility we bear with the use of our intelligence and faculties. The people making up this iceberg daily make responsible choices with their circumstances and faculties, separate to monetary considerations. All economic systems throughout our human history have been preferential and prejudicial, and this is what we need to alter to avoid repeating the same old mistakes. We need a system that equips 8 billion people with self-contained individual economic agency that cannot be controlled externally or taken from them. Question 4. Is money the only stable and realistic option? Many eco-campaigners and activists who are dedicated to change still believe that, really, money is the only real serious medium open to us. Tax the rich, Green New Deal, and countless COP summits later, we're going backwards. Eminent economist Professor Joseph Stiglitz appeared on Channel 4 News saying, 40 years of neoliberalism has failed. It's time to invest in people. No shit, Sherlock. Yanis Varoufakis, Noam Chomsky, Jeremy Rifkin, Tess Van Pettinger, Paul Mason, Kate Raworth, Farid Kavari, and we can go back to Marx, who was and still is way ahead of all of us. Engels, Schumpeter. We've been beating down this door for over a century. If we want experts in money, we may as well be consulting Trump's accountants and lawyers. The overriding question is always, where is the money going to come from? And neoliberals say, don't ask us, we're taking your money. And they use every form of domestic and foreign violence to impose their economic Stockholm syndrome. and it has to be said some captives have fallen for their captors. So if we happen to be comfortable with money and see no urgency to change it, we need to ask ourselves the question as to whether money is a form of evil in itself, or is it just the people using it? Could our conviction about money be diverting us from what we really need? We can have this debate through the course of the workshop. Only now are periodicals publishing articles on should we redesign money. But with current political trends, how long will this take? Who will control the source? A couple of years ago, the Bank of England started considering a government cryptocurrency. Why? Because they realised they could do much more with it than with monetary budgets, the welfare state, health and other fiscal burdens, and controlling all our access and choices in the bargain. But it would just be another form of money because they cannot see anything outside of money, and it has to benefit their monetary accounts. So people are saying keep your cash, but the Bank of England can make cash illegal tender overnight. And paradoxically, money then would become a form of parallel non-monetary economy operating in the shadows. Money in any form is unfit for purpose because it will always be controlled, motivate crime and reward corruption. On top of this, we have dwindling resources, divestment from governments, population expansion and climate crisis. We are no longer standing at the top waiting for climate change to hit us. We're on the slippery incline towards the drop-off point of no return. Has anybody ridden scree on a mountain? For the uninitiated, you can see scree like a rockfall on the side of mountains where the weather has exposed and eroded the land into shale and rock. Riding it is very easy and comfortable, like an escalator. You step on a rock and it'll slowly take you down. It'll save your energy and your knees on your descent after a long climb. Waswater in Cumbria has scree all along the hills descending into the deep lake. If you start at the top at one end, you'll never reach the other without having to swim. But some can lead to a precipice you can't see from above. So if you get too far down, there's suddenly no escape. Also, if you stay in one spot, there is danger of dislodging an avalanche. So you have to hop from rock to make it ahead and cross to solid ground. Fighting the elite is like an endless climb, and they're happy to sap all our energies. They can make it hard or easy. They don't care as long as they've got us going in the direction they wish. The only way of preventing this is to get ahead of them economically. We have to be careful where we invest our time and energies. We have no choice. We have to get ahead to something more reliable and solid, off the scree that the elite have made for us, that's accelerating us towards climate catastrophe. So the PNME cannot be an idealised dream. It has to be real and it has to be rapid, or we will always be fighting for money and losing that fight. So we have to get real. Well, none of us are here to get depressed. But if you saw a child in the road of an oncoming juggernaut, your best empowerment would be alarm. And all of us considering this are drawn to this topic because we already have that alarm. It's not the time to stick your thumb out and hope that the driver gives us a lift so we can try to persuade them to hit the brakes, especially when they've already broken through numerous warning barriers. We have to get ahead and create a diversion, and that means facing up to some unpalatable truths. Noam Chomsky revealed that as early as 1990, 95% of the global economy was speculative. Just money making more money. Investments, returns, interest, credit, shares, stock trading, insurance, national debt ownership, intellectual property rights, licensing and contracts. By 2009, only 3% of financialisation concerned manufacturing. In our video, we'll see the extent to which neoliberalism has reduced the global workforce. Now, I wouldn't dream of denigrating the struggle of trade unions and socialists, especially in the global south where they pay with their lives. But with systematic divestment of governments and public services, rewarding corruption and the rise of far-right and right-wing policies, seeing this reality should disabuse us of any misconception that the economy is influenced by manufacturing and the labour force. But this should move us to another empowerment. It's like we're in the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where we're transfixed by this gargantuan, highly complex ship that can blast us away with a sonic boom, and all we have to communicate with it are pea shooters and a Bontempi organ. Profit has been systematically decoupled from public activities. Some people think as long as we can serve them and they can divert our taxes, they'll keep us on a leash. But they really don't care, and any moral facade they project is just to self-justify, to manage our expectations or groom us away from any libertarian concepts, or even just to win the war of semantics to look cleverer than their opponents. This is their game. The total net worth of the top 10 richest people amounts to approximately $1.5 trillion. Of course, this is the equity leveraging multiple fingers in many pies and sounds like a lot, but in our video we'll see just how puny that is in comparison with the global economy. The economic juggernaut is a runaway vehicle, and the only way the elite can keep up to maintain any control of it is to accelerate. Now we're going to have a look at what form that acceleration takes. The Yemen, Ukraine and Palestine we think of as sectarian and political conflicts, and to some degree they are. But we know these are only tools utilised and goaded on by broader powers to destabilise and reinforce political and economic dependencies. What we are seeing, in fact, is the tip of a different kind of iceberg that is set to grow rapidly. This economic land grab to grapple for control is nothing new, but a recent development is accelerating it on a global scale. So far, we've linked it with returns from financialisation, arms trading, oil and mineral extraction, drugs and pharma, international contracts and strategic political interdependencies. But there is a more sinister and stealthy objective. It's about the economic investment of the elite. Financialisation had the prospect of exceeding the value of all commodities and assets, and we regard the wealth generated as obscene, but something recently emerged as more profitable for investors than all those previously mentioned industries. They've made all their money, but will always look to the greatest returns for investment as security against collapse of the system. That return is currently in good old-fashioned real estate. Here's an advertisement for what they're already constructing. It's called NEOM. This is a Saudi Arabia development they're claiming is green. We can see who it's marketed for. What they don't mention is how many tribes people have lost their homeland and how much sea sand is necessary to build this, further devastating the ecosystem for their indulgences. So let's have a look at what analysts are saying is on the table, and while we do so, see if you can spot what the majority of them have in common. Now what follows is going to sound a little bit like the Miss World contest. Along the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden we have Sudan, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Somalia and Yemen. Along the Persian Gulf and Gulf of Oman, Kuwait, southern Iran and South Pakistan, along the Black Sea, Ukraine and Georgia. Watch out, Romania and Bulgaria. Overlooking the Caspian Sea, northern Iran and Turkmenistan. For the Gulf of Mexico, Caribbean, Pacific and Atlantic, Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica and Panama, beware. Colombia, Ecuador, Venezuela, Guyana, Cuba, Cayman Islands, Haiti and Dominican Republic. Gracing the Indian Ocean, the South and East China Seas, Philippine Sea, Solomon Sea and the East Pacific, we have Myanmar, Bangladesh, Vietnam, Taiwan, Philippines, Burma, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, Solomon Islands and possibly North Korea. For the Mediterranean, Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, Palestine, Jordan, Western Syria and Lebanon. I'll leave the rest of South America and Africa to your imagination. So what would you say they have in common? Well, you'll have spotted they're all coastal. And what do coastal properties guarantee? Prime real estate returns. Plus all the sea sand you need. If you think this might just be conspiracy theory, then check out the article Bigger, Stronger, the US Dredging Fleet is Growing, appearing in MarineLink 2024. With the possible exception of Algeria, which has not yet reached middle income status, Georgia's economy also recovered, Indonesia and Costa Rica, maybe a few others. They are all currently lands of economic instability, conflict and poverty. For corroboration, you can check the Index of Economic Freedom at heritage.com. Some countries have been suspended due to wars, and Palestine isn't even listed as a country. Now, it's not the building that's the biggest issue, or developing land that's underutilised. It's the methods by which they secure the land and rights. How the poor get shifted out or resort to fighting it out amongst each other, egged on by right-wing leaders infringing on human rights and altering law. This we're seeing right now across Europe. We saw what happened to the Slovak premier, and Mexico's premier caused a riot trying to push through presidential powers above democratic rights. The UK is seeking to replace the Human Rights Act with a sovereign rights bill, clamping down on public protests. Land and property grabs are happening by corporations in London, increasing rents, mortgages and insurance everywhere. The elite juggernaut do not want the poor occupying their prime real estate, and they don't mind bulldozing the European Court on Human Rights and international humanitarian law to get it. It's a new form of international colonialism and slave trade. We'll see just how much of a slave trade in our following video. Rishi Sunak has stated this week we need to move from a post-war setting to a pre-war setting. And just what war is he grooming youth for by stripping them of employment, hope and prospects, charging them for it, then offering them exciting weekends away? The trick of all failing premiers: if you're about to lose power, start a war using other people's families. So back to our iceberg. Whatever our ideologies, our dedication, whether that's to socialism, the trades unions movement, the NHS, public services, housing, the bankrupting of councils, volunteer work, charities, human rights, protesting, it's no coincidence the public are no longer the prime priority of democratic governments. They want us powerless or distracted to divert us from their schemes or consume our energies fighting them. All successful public uprisings this century that changed governments to public-led governments were ultimately faced with the same old question: where is the money going to come from? and basically had to go cap in hand to the elite and make compromises. So ideology is not going to cut it. We need to mobilise economically in a way that's practical for every single person with what they already possess and processes that we already use. Our video later will show us just where our true power lies. But now to the good news. There have been reported 4,000 alternative economies, some national and international in scale, that have helped people survive without money. But they've failed to significantly affect the monetary economy. They amount really to gnat bites in the heels of the elite. Many sadly collapsed. I was privileged to speak with lawyer and economist Edgar S. Kahn, who invented time dollars before he sadly passed away. And he admitted to me that after decades of success he was giving up because people just stopped accounting for their exchanges. Even though it affected businesses and people's access to services, including legal representation, he said people just stopped accounting for their exchanges and formed localised altruistic communities, which is great, right? That's what we ultimately want, but not all people are altruistic. Rob Hoskins, who founded the Totnes Pound Note, told me he was quitting because people couldn't pay their bills or taxes in the currency. The admin was taking far too much work having to chase people up. But these reasons why all these exchange systems fail or have limited success provide lessons for us to avoid. What we really need is for all these communities and systems to combine forces, and some of that is starting to happen. So let me tell you what the PNME is not. This I can do in one sentence. The PNME is not money, it's not crypto, it's not mutual aid, it's not time exchange, barter, it's not interdependent, it's not ideology, it's not preferential, and it's not linked to the value of commodities. So any economist trying to apply monetary effects to the PNME economy will need to suspend their calculations because it's not money and doesn't engage all the peripheral effects of the monetary economy, such as inflation, deflation, etc. And even its effect on the monetary economy will defy some of money's usual behaviours. But we don't have to guess from scratch what the parallel non-monetary economy will be. We have a vast array of examples. The most successful, long-standing non-monetary economy is the Swiss Ver. It was formed during the Great Depression for a membership of small to medium enterprises to be able to continue trading less affected by the hyperinflation. It survived the Great Depression, World War II and the COVID-19 pandemic, regularly achieving between 15 and 17% of Swiss GDP, even up to 25% during COVID, as it was able to offer businesses outside of its circular economy interest-free or low-interest loans, and even helped out the Swiss government. When loans are repaid to the Ver bank, the figures are nullified and cease to exist. The Ver developed into a circular digital ledgering system where nothing physically changes hands, and while it stays in accounts it has zero value. Now, to facilitate dual transactions in money and the Ver, the bank decided to link one Swiss Ver with the value of one Swiss franc. But the disadvantage of that is that whatever affects the Swiss franc affects what the Ver can achieve. In times of crisis like hyperinflation, it would need to decouple from that equivalence to remain effective. But the main reason it remains limited is that it doesn't impact the global monetary economy. So you might ask, what if every country did the same thing? Well, it's a circular business economy and people cannot pay taxes or mortgages or do their shopping with it. So its effect would be limited and not really affect the predominant currency. But we can do something way superior to this. So, how does the PNME affect money? Who of you know the first principle of the martial art Jiu-Jitsu? The principle is to utilize and maneuver the energy and momentum of your opponent to reach your aims and gain control. So how does the PNME divert the elite? Just as real estate has superseded oil, armaments, drugs in investment returns, the PNME makes green initiatives far more profitable than any monetary industry, and it uses various processes to do this. Far more profitable even for the 1% elite. So our video will give us a scope of this, but to some the thought of the rich getting even richer is against all their inclinations and struggle. But they're going to do that with or without us. In order to get their hands on the riches of the PNME, they will have to demonstrate they are meeting green standards set by the PNME global community. If we can mobilise mass rapid green eco-recovery, which is linked to expanding localisation policies involving every person, who cares what profit anybody makes? We'll forget about the profits. It'll have no value and not be linked to commodities or assets. What it achieves will become the prevailing factor. We'd certainly get nowhere fast continuing to fight the elite. The PNME is how the 8 billion population get ahead by using something far more solid and reliable than money, so that rather than trying to sink the capitalist ship, we get the elite to willfully abandon ship. And we have to act now, while we still have our freedoms. So as an exercise, how many of us would be willing to get out of bed to work for £5 an hour for 8 hours a day? Not many takers, I expect. But this is the equivalent for those working in the gig economy. Our video will use this calculation to project a worst case scenario of what the PNME can achieve in comparison with what money achieves now, and I think you'll be pleasantly shocked. The PNME needs no pre-existing source. We can simply make it up and agree on it as an international collective, investing in every individual's autonomous agency, qualities and passions from birth to death as a human right, not dependent on formal employment or any welfare state. Not only can it outperform money, it can compensate injustice, loss of homes, illness, bereavement, loss of business. It can empower repatriation and rebuilding for masses of dispersed people. So the PNME doesn't have to start with empty accounts. Now we have to project the collective power of all of that over political dictators, the military, international conflicts, public facilities and law. In 1944, survivors in the concentration camps in Germany could not have imagined their imminent liberation and following restitution. Liberation from our neoliberal Stockholm syndrome can be just as rapid. All the human solutions we need exist, and being able to gauge them will inspire us. It should be fun and fill us all with solid hope and awe in what people are truly capable of. Speaking at Stockholm Impact Week on the subject of an introduction to the meta-crisis, Daniel Schmachtenberger said this:
"You can't focus on the bad guy over there. And then you also can't let yourself stop or not act because you don't know how, but you also can't act doing things that you know won't work, so you have to learn. You have to try to figure it out and talk to other people that are, and then recognize that if life was not actually beautiful, meaningful, and sacred to you, you would give no shits at all that it's being destroyed. And so don't act out of anger, depression, and fear. Act out of that sense of the sacred. and that you are in service to a life that is beautiful, to a life with a capital L, a world that is beautiful, and that you're at a time when there is a higher possible consequence of your action than there has ever been for humans. And there is an obligation in that, and there is a meaningfulness in that you don't want to waste.
We have to deal with the realities that exist now with what we already have now. So I invite you to scrutinise this proposal and please sign up to contributing to the 8-module video workshop to help concretize the processes and options that will make the PNME become a real empowering force in a very, very short time. You could become one of the few people that ended poverty for the entire globe. How would you feel about that? The PNME will make a mockery of accounting, and as the numbers rapidly increase in all accounts, we'll be able to forget about them and focus on what we really need and want to achieve. Beyond this, economy will be a measurement of what people are fully capable of doing individually and collectively. Andrew Feinstein, former cabinet member with Nelson Mandela, concluded a recent speech with this: "There is a vast and rapid movement for public outcry. Never underestimate how quickly things can change. What need do we have of stupid politicians? Think big and think new. We need a public-led democracy and a new anarchic economy." The key word was anarchic, and that is what the parallel non-monetary economy is. It's something that trusts in people's best interests, even of the 1%, and much better than the so-called reliable, stable chaos being wrought by the insane monetary economy now. What he didn't realise is that it's already here, under our noses. All we have to do is come together, reach out and grab it. It will demonstrate the power of the 99% to economically subsume the 1%, altering their agendas for the most rapid green industrial and economic revolution the world will ever need to see, making money obsolete in the process. This is not the time for more of the same, or a resistance movement. We're not going backwards to some system that works marginally better than what we have now. We already do astonishing work that people could not pay us for, and that's happening the world over. The parallel non-monetary economy invests in the best humanity is capable throughout our lives and on a daily basis. This is a revolution, and we need revolutionaries. One final word of caution. If anyone asserts that this is a utopian pipe dream, they have not done their research. Thanks for listening. Stick around for the 8-module workshop outline and the video, What is the Parallel Non-Monetary Economy? So just a few words on the book, A Chance for Everyone, the Parallel Non-Monetary Economy. To illustrate, someone could tour Japan by bullet train and say in the conversations, "Oh yeah, I've done Japan, amazing." Well, as stated at the outset, we need to go deeper. This book would be the local bus that stops at every village. So it's written not to give you the PNME on a plate, but to allow you to stop and contemplate the peripheral landscape and everything that contributes to the making of this eventuality a real prospect. It's not an academic paper, though it quotes hundreds of academic authorities, but it's written for people of all levels of knowledge to grasp and envision how it can change everything we do. It comes in 3 sections. The first deals with our real mental subjugation to the insane use of our money. Part 2 peruses the expanse of global alternative movements, currencies and organisations working to counter the disparity of capitalism. And Section 3 explores what the PNME is and our options for implementing it. It's available for free in digital download formats, or you can follow the links for the hard copy purchase at achanceforeveryone.com, where you'll also find various specific published articles, illustrated supplements, audio and video presentations, and each of the guide videos for the 8-module workshop. Or consider joining the Facebook group, Parallel Non-Monetary Economy of the 99%, to check out the featured posts, especially turning costs to income, how the parallel economy works, and the parallel non-monetary economy, past, present and future, as well as the range of organisations and individuals that could make this happen. Enjoy.